Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling, award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers, coast to coast, the Gulf to the 51st state, and around the globe. And the 51st state, by the way, you know, it might not be all of Canada, but it might be Alberta. More on that in upcoming shows, because that is kind of cooking along. So this is a quick kind of interim between show update for you. This is not the show that's coming out this week, which will be in the next couple of days, which is on our real estate series, in this case, Rural Land, upcoming, along with some other, should we say, global goodies that may be occurring at the time. They change from minute to minute. But I did want to bring you some thoughts on what's going on globally, macroeconomically, U.S. economy, and particularly Iran. And Iran is not the only hotspot problem out there on the, shall we say, hold on one second, let me hit the lighting here. All right, there we go. And by the way, thanks for all the comments on the better lighting in the more recent shows and the fix of the camera and all that stuff. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your comments. Please leave them. And we do read them, even though we don't respond often. And look, if somebody can use this information or would enjoy this information, please send them the link. Please hit the subscribe. It's free. It helps a bunch. Hit the little bell. You'll know when the shows come out, because I don't have a set time schedule other than I try and get at least one or two done each week. And you can hit the like button too. And you are viewing me on who knows which of the many platforms we're on. We're going to be expanding our Substack presence here over the next couple of weeks. So that will be great also. And you can always listen to me if you don't want to look at me on ontherightsideradio.com, which has the podcast. And thanks for all your support there. As always, we will have on that website, ontherightsideradio.com, a number of, not so much articles, but some great videos by some great minds who know their stuff on the few topics I'm going to bring to you today. And today is going to be really brief, guys. This is an interim show. Just because it's really important, you need to be thinking about it. And, you know, in this euphoria of supposedly the strait being open and, you know, peace talks continuing and, you know, all is great with the world and blah, 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 there should be a sense of reality here. And I hope it's all true, and I hope it's 10 times better than everybody is, shall we say, enthusiastically endorsing right now. But in Europe, we have big problems coming, okay? Europe's nature is changing. It goes back to Barack Obama, what he did in Syria to foment a 6 to 8 million refugee crisis, which were welcomed with open arms by the socialists and globalists throughout Europe, just like we experience here in the United States. And that has changed the nature of Europe and European governments. And Europe is no longer our friend. It is no longer our ally. I've been telling you this for a couple years. And Europe will, in its current form, not exist within a 1 to max 5-year period. That will have huge impacts on the United States and the world. I don't know if they're going to be good or bad. I presume some will be good, some will be bad. In the last week, and by the way, we're going to be talking about Iran. We're going to talk really quickly about what's happening with the dollar, the DXY, it's called, DXY, the dollar index, where the dollar is positioned in terms of value relative to all other currencies. It's important. And we're going to talk really quickly, because we're going to hit it hard sometime in the next month or two, about what's happening with the socialist takeovers of the big cities through elections in the United States and, by the way, elsewhere. By the way, elsewhere. Uh, no rant story, other than we're getting a little tiny tad of snow, which is better than nothing, but doesn't help much with the parched earth the West is experiencing. I'm going to repeat a quote for you really quickly. I brought it to you a couple of weeks ago. It's George R. R. Martin. Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. Great quote. Now, what Martin didn't tell us is that ladder going down or is that ladder going up? And we certainly have the chaos, but we don't know the direction of the ladder, do we? And that's really what this show is about, to get you to think about it, not to tell you what it might be, because you know what? Nobody knows what it might be. But all the possibilities need to be examined and be circulating in your mind. So over in Europe, our great friends, who don't let us use their air bases, i.e., Spain, etc. Europe said that they will help. This is after, a month of pontificating, vacillating, meetings, consensus, all the things that, shall we say, doom civilizations. They said they'll help us open the strait. Oh, well, thank you, now that it's supposedly open. But they would only help after the hostilities are over. Well, really? So the hostilities are over, the strait is open anyway, but now you're going to help. Terrific. Great allies. In a very, very disturbing turn of events, Viktor Orban, who is a terrific leader in Hungary for the last 12 years, the only country in Europe, literally, that allowed no immigration. I mean, their borders were closed, and Hungary, as a result, is the most stable, or certainly amongst the one or two or three most stable countries economically, socially, you name it, in Europe. Viktor Orban lost his election here a few days ago to a guy who says he's really tough on immigration. That's what all the European politicians say. And by the way, that's what the American politicians say. And they all lie, other than Trump. So the guy that got elected is all for Hungary getting more involved in the EU. Up to this time, Hungary hasn't even contributed to the EU because Orban and his government were opposed to the entire concept of the European Union, quite wisely, I might add. So there's going to be some changes in Hungary. And you're going to see that the promises of the newly elected as to immigration go the wayside of all the promises made by all the socialists like him in the future. That's a big change. That will affect Europe. In Spain, which is run by socialists, 1 million automatic work permits are going to be issued for 1 million new refugees. And the refugees, by the way, to qualify, have to be from, yes, North Africa or the Mideast. I'll let you think about that. I mean, Spain is toast. Now it's going to be burnt toast. That's going to affect the EU. I don't need to tell you what's happening in Britain. It's close to a civil war over there. Ireland is literally in arms, and the country's been brought to a standstill by a nationwide strike. Good for them. And France is hopeless, as France always is. So that is what's going on in Europe. And all this is part of that disintegration of Europe. And we have articles under European disintegration on the website. It's going to have a big impact, folks. The blockade. Okay, the blockade was masterful. The blockade should have been instituted in day one of the conflict, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not privy to the inner circle at the White House, but just looking from afar, That's what I would have done. You know, in the end, all wars are economic. If you starve the enemy of money, the enemy is going to have a problem. And also in Iran, the people are finally kind of uprising. There's a growing number of ambushes of IRGC personnel by Iranian freedom fighters, the people, 95% of the population. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. There's foreign militias from Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan that the IRGC has brought in. They have women. The IRGC has women. Think about that religion. Okay, manning checkpoints along with kids like 12, 13 years old, manning checkpoints because their manpower is either trapped in buried tunnels or killed or fled or who knows what. There's a long period of instability coming in Iran. Hopefully, it emerges as an ally of the United States. And hopefully, we have some dictate over the flow of their oil resources and we make some profit off it. Lord knows we've spent enough on this conflict. We need a bit of reimbursement here. One of the things which came out here in the last week or two, and I've been telling you about this for 2 months, I mean, you don't have to be a member of the CIA, is that Russia and China have been using their satellites to assist the Iranians in targeting American bases. Literally, other than the poor guys who died in that tanker accident, all the rest of the casualties, or virtually all of the rest of the casualties and the deaths, the other 7 folks who so far have given their lives in defense of the country, were because of Chinese and Russian targeting, specific targeting of radar stations, planes, you name it, in the Gulf countries for Iran. Iran does not have those capabilities. In fact, it came out that China actually gave Iran a satellite to do that with. But China's our friend, you bet. By the way, there's a couple articles there under China, our enemy, on the website you might want to read. And the Russians, I mean, who's to be surprised? And really, since we're doing the very same thing to them over in Ukraine, like again, who's to be surprised, right? But what this does show is the lengths to which our real enemies, China and Russia right now, unfortunately Russia, because they should be our ally, but thanks to Obama and Biden and the neocons under them, they are not. We have more to look forward to in the future along these lines, both covert and overt by the two of them. And they understand that war is economics. That is why they're going hell-bent for leather to try and replace the dollar or semi-replace the dollar with the yuan as a reserve currency. And that is why they're going hell-bent for leather at a whole new payment plan backed by actual commodities, including precious metals, gold, and silver, to replace the US dollar, which is backed by nothing. So that is a developing scenario. This was the kinetic side, but the economic side is has geared up. It is well underway. It will impact each of us, you and me, and this country. And over in Iran, we have the price of oil, which everybody has been jumping up and down about. Oh, it's going to go to $200 a barrel and blah, 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 blah. Don't listen to all those morons. If you were watching the markets, you knew oil spiked and you knew oil was going to come down. And as you can see, as of today, it dropped somewhere between 10 and 15% this morning with the announcement that the straits were open. And the story behind that is that the Iranians say the straits are now open so long as the peace talks, which they didn't want to attend, keep going. I view that as a good sign. But let's face it, folks, Unless the regime in Iran is changed, and I'm afraid it can only be done by the Iranian people and only with our assistance, arms, tactics, intelligence, you name it. Uh, we've bought a lot of time, at least a lot of time in the general context of the universe. 5 years, maybe 10, perhaps. I mean, remember, Russia and China are going to resupply these guys. Russia and China are going to come in and help them rebuild their nuclear facilities unless we take all their goodies. And Russia and China could supply them the goodies again. So, yes, the threat of a nuclear armed Iran has been postponed yet again, but it's not going to be over until the regime changes. This is a band aid, this is not a cure. And it's going to take a while, even though oil has come down precipitously from the spike of about 120 bucks a barrel to, I think right now it's trading at about 81, maybe even 79, might be in the 70s. In any event, a big drop, a lot of it like today. The impact of the increase in petrol products and the impact in the decrease, in fact, virtually none, is getting out of fertilizers. Remember, the planting season has come and gone in most of the world. So fertilizers, you can't go out in the field and put in fertilizers when the crops are growing. You crush crops, and it's too late in the year. It's a pretty delicate balance, and timing is critical in the application of fertilizer, which means there's going to be less crops all around the planet this year. And there's going to be more people all around the planet this year, just like there's been every year. That seems to be a collision course kind of set up since everybody has to eat. And the oil prices affect everything that we purchase. I mean, it's not just fuel in your car. Literally, there's 30,000 products. Virtually everything you use day to day without a thought has some kind of petro or petrochemical derivative. The Iranians, the IRGC, I should say, the IRGC was successful in doing some pretty significant damage to gas facilities and oil facilities around the Gulf. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Oman, you name it. You can't rebuild those things overnight. And obviously, Iranian output is down because of the beating they took. And you can't rebuild those overnight. So the oil situation, while everybody's jumping up and down about it and they're excited, the oil situation still exists. And it's going to exist in an exacerbated form for the next 60 to 90 days at least, assuming everything goes great. The straits remain open. Even the regime changes in Iran, it doesn't matter. Let me give you a few stats for you to think about. So right now we got 1,500 tankers lined up or on their way to the Gulf of America, to load up in Houston and along the Gulf Coast, Louisiana. And that's great. Bunch of extra dough for the United States, particularly for the oil companies. I'm sure they're delighted. But the logistics reality, and I have a great couple of videos on the website for you. They're under the audio bar. They're under World War III economic. This is a specialist in shipping, okay, a very specialized field. You should listen to this guy. He has all the real stats, but in a general overview, so it takes about 20 days to get oil out of the Mideast, Straits of Hormuz area, okay, and that's to go to Asia, which is desperate for oil, and to Europe, which is on its butt. In fact, Europe, folks, will be out of jet fuel and diesel sometime in the next 30 to 70 days. Out of it, like done, toast. Asia, there's already rationing going on. I brought this story to you in the last show. It takes 58 days for a tanker to do the circuit between Houston and the Gulf Coast and and the oil's destination. So you have an extra 38 days there, just tanker transit before oil that is right now getting loaded in Houston instead of in the Gulf gets to where it's going. So factor that into your equation. Russian oil is down 40% because of Ukrainian attacks, ironically, with the assistance of the United States targeting. And Iranian Russian oil tankers, their shadow fleet that basically they operate to get around the U.S. BS sanctions, that's getting interdicted by the Europeans. The French, just in the last few days, took over 2 Russian oil tankers. So yeah, we're a long ways away from getting things sorted out on the petrochemical and the petroleum front, and that includes, by the way, natural gas. And the damage that's been done will take years to repair. The world, other than what America and a few other locations can do to increase exports, Venezuela, which is kind of America now, and the American, shall we say, output and Canadian output, the rest of the planet can't increase output. In fact, their output's going to be curtailed for quite a while, which means not $120 a barrel, but under best geopolitical circumstances, at least somewhere in the $70 to $80 a barrel oil. Remember when all this started, oil was somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 to 60, fluctuating. That's still a big jump. That's going to have an impact economically and on your pocketbook. On the other hand, a nuclear missile from Iran would have a much bigger impact. So everything is relative. With all this going on, in the past, when you have this kind of conflict and chaos, right, back to Martin's quote, the dollar generally rises because it was considered a safe haven. Well, that all changed in 2022 when Biden, Obama's third term, intentionally assisted the Europeans, the morons, in taking $300 billion of Russian securities, their reserves, and just more or less stealing them, certainly putting them on ice, which of course shattered the faith of the entire planet in the United States government and the United States dollar. And the chickens are coming home to roost because in a period where for the last 250 years, when war comes, when chaos comes, the dollar rises. It was considered the most stable currency, and treasuries, which we need to function with our huge deficits, were considered the safest investment and most liquid investment on the planet. And therefore, capital flooded from all over the world into the dollar, which rose the dollar relative to other currencies, the Dixie, the dollar index. Now, there's some bad things about a strong dollar. It hurts exports and other things. I'm not here to talk about that today. But instead, the dollar over the last several weeks has been falling. In fact, a few weeks ago, it was like 100. That was the index level. And today it's around 90. That's a huge drop for a currency. That's a canary in the coal mine. Pay attention to it. And as the dollar drops, the costs of things that Americans buy goes up because you need more dollars to buy the same thing. I think they call that inflation. All right. And then the last thing I want to talk about today is you need to really keep a close eye on these upcoming elections. I'm not optimistic about the House. I'm worried about the Senate. You need to throw some money at the till. I have 35X, 10X, 15X, all sorts of great campaign multipliers posted on the website under elections and donations. Guys and gals, throw $20 at it, throw $50 at it, throw $10 at it. I mean, if you're throwing $50 at a 35X multiplier, basically somewhere in the neighborhood of what, 1,750? No, 17,500, whatever the math is what you're contributing to a campaign. Where else can you get that kind of bang for your buck for your sanity, your freedoms, and your economy? Not to mention the Constitution. Get involved. And the SAVE Act, which is critical to the United States for the reason I'm about to bring up, the SAVE Act, which basically says, gee, you got to be a citizen to register and you got to have ID to vote. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but that's what it is still stalled by rhinos in the friggin' Senate, even though it was passed by the House. You need to get on your senator's butt. They're voting on it like today or tomorrow, supposedly. And you need to send a 2-line zinger to them or call and say, vote yes. I mean, this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's like playing Russian roulette with a revolver with 6 bullets in it. You're going to lose the game. Your odds are poor. And because of what's happened with immigration and illegal voting, and I got some articles for you on election fraud on the website too, on therightsideradio.com. Basically, you're seeing a socialist takeover, maybe a communist takeover of many of the big cities in America. I mean, the lefties won in Miami. That's a red state, folks. And it has a huge Cuban population, which is rah-rah America and boo-hoo communism. And of course, you know about Kami Mandami in New York. And you have a socialist running for, admitted socialist running for mayor in LA. And several candidates beginning to vie in San Francisco and Chicago. Not that Chicago is not socialist as it is. I go down the list. But as much as us folks out in the real world look down at the big city folks, particularly the useful idiots who vote for socialists and communists, you can't ignore it. And these people, their agenda, which is wealth confiscation, taxation of unrealized gains, limitations on private property ownership, mandates on the use of your private property for the collective good. I'm going to be bringing articles on this as part of the real estate, or commentary on this as part of the real estate series. This is not a good trend, particularly given the midterms coming up and the likely outcome. And the certain outcome, I might add, if you don't get involved. So, this is your quick little update, some thoughts for you to ponder. Remember, Ukraine hasn't gone away. I mean, it's been buried in the news, but it's raging over there. Pakistan and Afghanistan has not gone away. The problems in Africa, particularly Nigeria, have not gone away. And I can go on down the list. So Iran has overshadowed everything. I'm here to bring you back to at least a thoughtful reality on both Iran and the much bigger picture, geopolitics and its effect on economy, and therefore its effect on America and its effect on you and I. That's all I have for today, folks. Just a quick update, get your mental juices percolating, if you will. You have a great weekend. The real estate show will be out in the next 2 days. Rural Lands, don't miss it. I was fascinated when I did the research. Make sure to hit that like, that subscribe, the bell, all that kind of stuff. Really appreciate it. And you keep the wind at your back till we talk soon again.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.